materials set up. So that did not pan out, so the grant wasn't approved from UC Santa Barbara. And we regrouped to figure out how we're going to do this instead. And we figured out that the church would be another option to contract with, and the utility user tax would be another funding source. But since these are substantially different than the original motion passed by the board, we decided to bring it back to the board for review and to approve, moving forward with getting a new MOU together. We're going to approve at the next meeting. The proposal is still essentially the same. The cost is still essentially the same. It's just now, would be March to March instead of the original August to August we had set up. But we just need the board's direction to continue to move forward in this new direction, to come back next meeting with a approval. So I have some people here, Frank and Katie, to speak on the issue and do a presentation from their end on what the community garden is. And we have some materials in terms of the mission statement and all that. Right, you want to play this now?
No, wait for just a second. So, good evening. I'm Frank Schaefer. I'm the pastor of University United Methodist Church here in Isla Vista. Been here for 4.5 years now, and we are especially excited about our newest project, which is the community garden. When we got together about maybe a year ago to determine what we were going to do with all that land that was basically not used around the church, this idea won over, and we started to make contact, and we ended up making contact with Katie from the UCSB Edible Garden Project or program. And so we were so excited to see this all come into fruition. We were actually able to start the garden because we did get some other funding through the church. And I'm here to tell you that this is really working. Now, the unique thing about this garden is that it is a garden without fences. It is a true community garden where everybody can not only harvest, but also help. And I was very surprised to see how many community members, students and older adults have joined us on the work days to actually get this garden up and going. It's a fantastic idea. It has some social justice aspect to it because some people are poor in this community and they don't know how to feed themselves, and here is a source of mineral and vitamin-rich food that they can get for free. And the surplus is going to be donated to various agencies in Isla Vista, so it stays in Isla Vista. But what also excites me, and maybe you can run the presentation, is that this garden has taken on a new aspect also in terms of not only having people collaborate, but also bringing people together in community. And so subsequently, we added the idea of installing a pizza oven. And we have a swing already that was installed in the garden, and we're going to have a water feature, some pond, whatever the county allows us to do, so that people can gather and commune. And here are some of the pictures of us working together in the early stages of the garden.
Awesome. Well, that's really great. I remember when we first heard this back in May. We remember this was the meeting, I believe it was May. It was around May 23rd in that time. When we first heard the vision for what it was, I thought it was such a great idea. And I remember really being sold by that point that you just made, which is that this is a space where a diverse amount of different groups of the community can come together over the act of gardening. And when I saw this slideshow earlier, I was so excited because that's already happening there. And so it was, I'm a big supporter of this. And before,
we can have two other comments if that's okay.
Go right ahead, sorry. I jumped the gun.
Hi everybody, I'm the outreach coordinator for this garden project, and I've loved working on it. I worked on it last quarter. My job basically is just to go canvassing in the neighborhood, not just college students. I'm talking to families, and that's how we were able to get volunteers for our volunteer days. we were able to see really good results. Like people were really excited about this, even just mentioning it to them. The community is really excited, and it's a really beautiful thing to see you get together, because usually people are just coming to class, or like even just families, they just go, you know, like just back and forth. And so the canvassing has been really great. Oh yes, we have a kids gardening workshop being planned, and we're working with across the street in St. George's Youth Center. And they're really excited about it too, because the kids want to do gardening. So it's going to be a really good place for the kids to have somewhere to know about gardening and learn about collaboration and just a whole bunch of like really cool stuff. We're also going to reach out to Ivy Elementary to see if the kids are, you know, I'm sure kids are going to be excited to work with the gardening and stuff like that. So we're really excited for this, and we hope we have your support.
And then I'll just wrap it up with a couple of logistical details. So Adriana is actually one of the interns that you would be funding through this program. I'm from the UCSB Sustainability Program. My name is Katie Maynard. We are still 100% committed to this program. We have decided that logistically it made more sense to be able to do a grant agreement directly with the Methodist Church. But the UCSB Sustainability Program is still donating our time to advise interns related to the project and to assist and support through advice on the project. We have been helping with mentoring Adriana, and we have been able to fund her for fall and winter, but hopefully starting in spring quarter, we would have Adriana funded by the grant from Community Services District. So we're really excited about that. As Frank mentioned, we have already started the garden. We're able to use a different grant to be able to get the initial start of the garden going. But there's a lot more that we'd like to be able to do with the garden to really make it to hit the full mission that we presented to you in the grant that we haven't been able to do yet because we've had limited funding to this time so far. So with the additional funding, the budget has changed slightly, but is about the same as it was before. We have the same ratio of the amount of funding spent on the student intern compared to more of the infrastructure costs. We will be continuing to do expansion of the raised beds. We have 5 raised beds already, and we'll be expanding that to additional raised beds with your funding, which allows us to grow even more food for the community. We'll be adding benches, which is really important for our older members and for families coming to be able to sit and enjoy the garden. Frank had mentioned the water feature, and we think this is actually really important. We're going to be adding sort of a native plant and pond area. Really good for the kids because they get to come and see little frogs and the mosquito eating fish, and can actually have some science lessons around that. We also heard very strongly through our door-to-door knocking and community engagement and through the engagement of the congregation that there's really a need for meditational space and calm space within Isla Vista. And so having some space within the garden where you can come and be able to sit by a very calming space was very important, hence the addition of the native plant and pond area. And I will say the other thing that we're really excited about, this is really being structured as a community garden that's geared towards really engaging folks in the space. The way the health codes are set up is basically anybody who comes and helps out in any way can also be able to take food home at the end of the volunteer day. So we are encouraging folks to come and hang out with us, so don't just harvest and walk away. That's not very sustainable for us, but if folks come and they help us water or even talk to us while we're watering, we can take a little bit of food home afterwards, and that'll really let us both really create ownership around the garden, but also to keep it as a part of a community that's built around the garden. And so we do not have approval yet to do external donations, but again, anybody who comes to a garden event or volunteers at a garden event can take food home as a result of that. So if there's any other questions, we're happy to answer.
Yeah, I was going to pose this to Jonathan. Is it still the intention to use part of the UCSB grant to fund this?
No, because UCSB said no for this grant, so we would use tax revenue.
Okay. And the amount would be?
It's $11,090,
For an annual
which is
grant.
$9 less than it was the last time I came forward, so not the same.
Any other questions from the board?
I just mechanically, how would it work? Is this just a since these are all estimates, is this gonna be a reimbursable grant, or are we just gonna give them $11,000 and they're gonna report back and say, here's what we spent the money on? Or, and then George said, oh, this is an annual grant, are we looking at this as a continuing grant that would go beyond 1 year?
For today, we're only asking for this initial funding, so we're not asking for funding past the first year. We'd like to look at what might be needed in future years, but at this stage, we're only asking for the first year. A lot of what's in this grant are things that are initial infrastructure costs that won't be annual costs. So at this point, we're only looking for 1 year.
I was just thinking for the administration that Jonathan does and how he pays bills, is it, are we just you're gonna give us a bill, are we gonna have an agreement with you for just $11,000 and we're gonna give you $11,000, is that how we envision it? Rather than, they say, oh, we spent $100 on seed, could we have $100?
That's true.
Yeah, it would be for the set amount.
Okay.
And so, like, you know how we've done the grant with Ivy Youth projects where it's, and that's 70,000, but
Right.
and we pay it out in 4 installments and
So who do we make the payment to? Is it to the church?
to the church, and we'd have to have an
That's-
We
agreement.
were
That
clarifying
is our-
that
is
to
our
the
council.
local
So
church.
what we've talked about is there need to be like certain provisions that are met. Yeah. So that's what we've negotiated in the agreement.
There's not an issue of church and state here.
Is it equal access? Those are the types of questions we're looking at. It's not dependent upon, or anyone's gonna be subject to witnessing, proselytizing, et cetera, All of those things are not concerned, so it's really no issue.
And then on the backside, as part of our grant agreement, I would assume that they'll report back at the end of the grant and say, here's what we spent your money on, we spent $200 on seeds and, you know, however it works out. Okay.
And there's no requirement to be a member of the church to participate in any of the garden activities or programs. So it is open to everybody in the Island Vista area. As Adriana talked about, we have been doing a lot of outreach. The Methodist Church is already the home of the warming center for the local hospice population, and so we're engaging folks from the warming center into the garden. There's a housing facility for adults with mental disabilities that's right next to us. We've been engaging a lot of them in the garden space. We're engaging St. George's in the garden space. So though this is a project that's being led by the Methodist Church, there's no requirement to participate in the Methodist Church or the congregation in order to participate in the garden.
And I want to add to that our church is actually an open and affirming church, so we accept people, not only accept, but welcome and support people of all walks of life, including persons that identify as LGBTQ+.
Any other questions from the board? So I think the action we're looking for tonight is to direct you to bring us back a grant agreement. And
I'll move that.
okay, there's a motion to direct staff to bring us back a grant agreement with the Methodist Church. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Motion has been seconded. Any public comment? Any more board comment? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0, or 5-0 with 1 recusal. All right, thank you so much for.
And I forgot to mention it, but there are a number of people from church here. If you could raise your hands real quick or get up. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you all so much for your volunteering. And I did have one other question before we end this item. Do you have a schedule or anything of your volunteer days?
We can send that to you.
That would be
Yes,
awesome.
we do update that quarterly, but we can definitely get it to you for this quarter.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.